you do is one of the handouts you should have picked up is a syllabus. If you just go ahead and skim through it real quick to make sure that you don't have any immediate questions. I tried to tell you guys as you came in, but I had someone come and ask me something. So I do have some handouts on the front table. You need one of each of those. So go get them if you didn't grab them on your way in, please.
Did you take your shot? Did you take your shot?
Sorry.
Okay, so Reese, number Palmer. Nicholas. Okay. Okay, I know I only gave you just a moment here to skim through the syllabus, but what I remember kind of being important from it was your grade breakdown. So it's consistent with how all math classes have been the last few years. We all have to follow the same thing. So 60% for major, 40% for minor. Major is your big test, your big quizzes. Minor is homework, daily work, classwork, basically anything else. We do have a book you can check out if you'd like to. The honor code is on here. This has information about late work. I do give points for late work, but only half credit. And it has to be fully completed and turned in before the unit test. So those of you that had me for pre-cal, same thing. So that's kind of what I remember about the syllabus, and I think it's pretty straightforward, but did y'all see anything else you'd like to ask about the syllabus? Okay, so I do ask that you put together a binder for this class. So same thing we did in pre-cal for those of you that I had in pre-cal, with the exception of I'm going to try to number most of the assignments for you guys this year. So if you are new to my class, notice that this syllabus has a number 1 in the top right. All that means is it's going to be the first thing in your binder. So when you have a binder, put this in the front. And then the second thing, one of the other handouts you picked up, has 3 different websites I need you to sign up for. And you should notice that that one's not numbered. I can't number all of them. It just depends on how I can send it to the copy machine. So number 2, the 3 websites I need you to sign up for, you should put a 2 in the top right, and when you have a binder, it goes behind number 1. Number 3 goes behind number 2, number 4 goes behind number 3. So the most you should ever have to do for our binder is to number the assignment and put it in the order. Now, even though I do ask my pre-cal students to do this, it is much more important for you guys as AP students, because everything we do, the next couple weeks we're going to be doing limits, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But we use limits a little bit here and there throughout the year, but limits are something that students typically forget about because they don't get to practice them all the time. So when we get close to the AP exam, there's a good chance you will want to go and look at some limit notes, some limit examples, etc. And if your binder is in order, then that's really easy to do. And if you don't keep your binder in order, then it's not so easy. So if you, I can't let you use your phones, but if you have your Chromebook with you, you can go ahead and start signing up for those 3 websites. And I'm going to discuss them as you do that. If you don't have your Chromebook with you and it's not charged, that is okay, because you can still do this for homework. But there's 3 sites we need. And I'm going to talk about them in opposite order. Make sure that you're using the correct code too. If you sign up for the wrong Google Classroom or the wrong AP Classroom, all I can do is kick you out and you still have to rejoin the correct one. So make sure you're picking the correct period, which is 3rd period. So while you look at that, the last one, AP Classroom, I do not use AP Classroom very much for AB. It's got some good questions on it, but a lot of them are very difficult questions, which is fine near the end of the year before the AP exam. But at this point in the year, usually they're too difficult. So I don't do too much with AP Classroom. We will do a mock exam through AP Classroom like in March or April, but short of that, I don't do much with AP Classroom. I still have to ask you to sign up for it though, because that is how you get an AP test ordered. So signing up for that class is how the school knows to order you an AP exam for the end of the year. So that's why I have to get you to do that one. And the second one, Google Classroom. I also don't use that a ton. But it's a good way for me to send announcements to you guys. In fact, there should be one announcement on there when you join that Google Classroom. It's a tutoring opportunity. If you know that you're going to need tutoring hours from U Alpha Theta, or you just want the community service hours, you want to jump on that opportunity because there's only limited availability. But Google Classroom is a good way for me to push that information out to you guys. And I often give you the option to turn in work in Google Classroom. So if you want to take pictures of your work with your Chromebook at school, I know that's harder than using your phone, but I can't let you use your phone. Or you could take pictures of your work on your phone at home and turn it into Google Classroom. Or I'll let you turn in the hard copies when I ask for them in class. You can do either or. You don't have to do both. The reason I give students an option for Google Classroom is because if you don't turn it in early, sometimes you guys lose your work, which means you'd have to redo something. Or sometimes you forget to bring your work with you the day that it's due, and then it ends up being late. Well, if you turn it in early on Google Classroom, there's no chance of that happening. So that's why I give that as an option. And it allows me to try to grade some of them early. So, and anytime I can grade them early, if I can see that it's not finished, if it's like a completion grade, which a lot of them are, I will tell you, hey, this isn't finished, you're going to get half credit on it, please finish it before the due date, and then you could still get full credit, potentially. So at the bare minimum, Google Classroom is for pushing notifications, but also if you'd like to turn in your work that way. Okay, and then the top one is my class website. So make sure you sign up or bookmark the AB one. And I'm going to give you just a minute to finish signing up for those, and then I'll talk about this one just a little bit, so you're at least aware of how you'll want to use this. Is it Beckham?
Yes.
Okay. You need the handouts up front, one of each of those, and then your seat's number 2 over here. So we had scanned through the syllabus already, and they are finished up signing up for these 3 classes, or 3 courses online. So you can, it's got directions, so you can do that at home. Okay, so this is very straightforward if you've had me as a math teacher before, because I structure it the same way. But if you've not had me as a math teacher before, this first one that I asked you to bookmark is where I put the bulk of what you need for this class. So I don't post every assignment to Google Classroom because I feel like putting it here is easier for you. So a couple things that you need to be aware of to use it is here in the top left, I do record our classes. That's mostly for students when you're absent. So if you miss for school business or you're really out sick someday, I record each of these and then put them on the calendar where they fit. So if you kind of look in there, August 21st, first period has a little link. That was my BC class this morning. So I recorded their class and put it on there already. Once our class is done, there will be a link third period. So in theory, if you were gone today, you could just click that link. You would see the same thing that's on the board. You can hear the same thing that I said to the class. Any information about quiz dates moving, how to do math, reminders about, I don't know, prom or whatever. All that kind of stuff, you can get all the same information by watching that. So I do ask that you do that. Also in the top right is the agenda. So that's the same agenda that you saw when you came in. So sometimes you might want to just scan that, see what your homework was, see if there's something you're going to have to turn in, see what a binder number was, see when the next test is coming up. It's just a quick little snapshot. There's some stuff about the AP exam in here. You probably don't care about that stuff right now. But what you do need to be aware of is if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, I organize the rest of the website the same way we organize our binders. So notice number 1, syllabus. I can't imagine why you would need an extra copy, but if you wanted an extra copy, you could click this link. It automatically downloads it, and then you can print it off at your convenience. Same thing with number 2. I don't know why you would need an extra copy of this, but maybe if you lost it, you can download it yourself and print it. But then something like number 3, when we start talking about actual calculus in just a minute, let's say you want to check your answers, which you should check your answers. If you're doing something wrong and you don't know that it's wrong, then that's a pretty big problem. So one of these links takes you to the solutions so that you can check your work as you do it. One of these has a quick little video review of the notes. So maybe in April, we're reviewing for the AP exam, and you're like, you know what, I just don't even remember how to do this question type. That's like a 10-15 minute video that would just review you over that. There's some links to some optional practice. So our first big quiz rolls around. You know that you need extra practice on X, Y, or Z. They're right there, linked for you. I try to make it as easy and straightforward as possible. So all you ever have to do is scroll down to the bottom, find the binder number, and any resources I have for that assignment or that topic I try to put there for you. Try to put it all in one place there. Okay, so again, if you don't have those, that's fine, because you can do this at home for homework. Just make sure that you do it before Friday. Is there anything that jumps out at you about these websites? Google Classroom, AP Classroom, or our class website? Okay, you guys are awake? Okay. Okay, so let's actually talk about what calculus is, what we do in AP Calculus, because it really can be simplified very quickly. Doesn't mean that calculus is easy, but there's not a lot of different things we do and not a lot of different math topics in calculus. Then we will actually start with some calculus. So, calculus is really only 3 big ideas. There's limits, which we're going to spend about 2 to 3 weeks on. Those of you that did pre-cal last year, 90% of it's going to be review, so it should be a lot easier for you. If you didn't take pre-cal last year, if you skipped or whatever, if you didn't learn that on your own over the summer, you're going to need to put in a little extra time the first couple weeks to catch up to everybody else. But limits is the first thing. And the second big topic in calculus is something called derivatives. And the third big topic in calculus is called integration. So the reason why we have to do limits first is derivatives and integration are both defined by limits. So they don't make any mathematical sense without limits, which is why we have to start with limits. But you can really summarize everything we do in this class in about 6 different things. we're either doing limit questions, 1, taking derivatives. There's a handful of derivatives that they ask you to be able to do by hand, number 2. Applications of derivatives, so there's lots of real-world stuff that derivatives can do for us. That's number 3. Number 4 would be integration. Integration is really just the opposite of derivatives, just like division's the opposite of multiplication. That's number 4. Applications of integration. Once again, there's lots of real-world stuff that integration does for us that other math classes can't do. So that's number 5. And then number 6 is AP review, practicing for the AP test. So pretty much everything we do is going to fall into one of those 6 things. Practicing limit questions, practicing derivative questions, applications of derivatives, integration, applications of integration, and AP review. So again, that doesn't mean that calculus is easy, but it's kind of a small, it's not like a little bit of everything. Like Algebra 2, you just learn as many skills as you can in the time that you have. Calculus is a little more focused, I guess. So, again, we have to start off with limits and get a grasp of those so that we can move on to derivatives. So, one of your assignments should say number 3 on it. Looks like this. And with these handouts, to be honest, they're usually a mixture of notes, examples, guided practice, and sometimes a little bit of homework in there. It's all kind of rolled up into one. So at first, I just want you to follow along with me. Anything I add to the paper, please add to your notes. Anything you want to elaborate on, obviously, if it helps you, then go for it. But this is the starts, the basic of what limits are and how to find them. So on this handout, we're going to look at limits graphically. So if you're given a graph, how to know how to go find a limit answer. So first off, the definition of a limit. A limit is the value, specifically the y value, a function approaches, I'm going to highlight that, from both the left and right side of a given x value. Limits are always about what value it's approaching. What is it getting close to? So these are not my notes. I didn't make up these notes. But what I really liked about these first ones that stood out to me is I love this first example, because the biggest kind of misconception hurdle that students have in calculus is a lot of times you guys get it mixed up with points. The difference between a point and a limit. They're two different things. If they were the same thing, we would just keep saying points and we wouldn't need to talk about limits. Two different words, two different ideas. But this whole row, these are just talking about points. You've been doing this since Algebra 1. This is saying when x is negative 3, what is y? When x is negative 3, what is y? Now there's an open circle there, so that means it's not there. So D&E is a common abbreviation we use in calculus. It means does not exist. And you can use that abbreviation all the time if you want to. You don't have to write out the words does not exist. Okay, so what do you think this one is? Good. When x is negative 3, y is 1. Okay, next one, when x is negative 3, is it 1 or 4? Okay, how do you know it wasn't 4? Good. So closed circle versus open circle. Hits here, doesn't hit there. Okay, and then the last of the points, when x is negative 3, y is 2. Okay, so that's points. That's the y value is this at this x value. You need to make sure that you understand the difference between that and what we're about to talk about with limits. Limits care about this. What does it approach? Limits actually could care less what's happening at that value. So the way this reads, this says the limit as x approaches -3 of f of x. So here's our f of x. F of x is the graph. So it's really just asking you what y value is it approaching as x approaches -3. Well, this is not the same thing as a point. So one thing that some people actually do is they just completely block this off. I do not care what's happening at x equals -3. I care what's happening around it. So just like the definition says, it's got to approach the same number on the left and the right. So as I get closer to -3 on the left, the y value gets closer and closer to 4. And as I approach -3 from the right, the y value gets closer and closer to 4. If it approaches the same y value on the left and the right, that's how you get your limit answer. So for some students, it takes a little while for that to connect and what you're really looking for. But once you kind of get it, these are pretty easy questions. They don't take very long to do. Now notice the second one looks a lot like the first one, but this one has a hole right here. You might be tempted to say this does not exist. But again, limits do not care what's happening at x equals -3. If it helps, block it off so you don't even look. It's approaching 4 from the left. It's approaching a y value of 4 from the right. If it approaches the same thing on the left and the right, that is your limit answer. It doesn't matter if the point's there. Doesn't matter if the point's here or there or not either. It has nothing to do with limits. Okay, so ignoring x equals -3 again. It approaches a y value of 4 on the left, a y value of 4 on the right. If the limit from the left equals the limit from the right, then the limit is that whatever they approach. Okay, so those of you that did pre-cal last year, all that should be pretty familiar. But those of you that have not heard this before, is that okay so far? You know what I'm looking for? Okay. Let's keep going then. So on this one, I'm going to ask you to add 2 questions to this, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into it in just a second. So sometimes we might ask this, and sometimes we're going to say, what is x as x approaches -3, but just from the left? And the way we ask that is with this little minus sign as an exponent. So that means you should pick a number slightly less than -3. Once again, you can completely block out -3 if it helps you. We don't care what's happening there. But -3 just from the left side. Pick a number less than -3 and then move closer to -3. That's 4. Sometimes you might be asked what the limit is from the right side. So if there's a little plus looking exponent here, that means the limit only from the right side. So you take a number slightly bigger than -3, you inch your way back towards x equals -3, and it gets closer and closer to a y value of 1. This is a perfectly fine question. Just from the left, your answer would be 4. This is a perfectly fine question. Just asking you from the right, your answer would be 1. But what happens if you approach some number on the left and a different number on the right? Good. Then that means that limit does not exist. If it doesn't say left or right, it has to be both. So what's the answer to this one? Okay, and if you had to justify that mathematically, like on a free response or something, how do you think you would do that?
It doesn't approach the same point on the left and right.
Very good. So you'd say something like, x approaches -3 from the left is not the same thing as x approaches -3 from the right. That would be your explanation. Not the same values. Now, a big part of this handout and going through this today is getting used to this notation. Reminding you about points, showing you what a limit is, showing why you might take just the left or just the right. But a lot of it is getting used to this notation. Okay, so to dive in deeper into that, because this is what they start talking about now, what is a one-sided limit? One-sided limit's the exact same thing. It's the value, specifically the y value. The function approaches a given x value, but just from the left, which is designated with the little minus sign, or just from the right, which is designated with the little plus sign. Same thing I just said, but they're asking you to fill in the blanks. And then before we turn the page, here's just a typed up example. If you approached 3 from the left, it approaches a y value of -1. If you approach 3 from the right, you approach a y value of 2. So sometimes they ask one-sided limits, sometimes they ask where they expect you to do both. So okay, so let's kind of do this one as a group, and that will help me see where you guys kind of slow down and maybe what it is that you need a little bit more of a push on. The page after this has you do like 3 or 4 sets of these, so you'll get a chance to practice it and make sure that that you do have it understood. Okay, so first one, A, what's the limit? Now really we should define this. This is really f of x. This should be in the directions, but so here's our graph, f of x. What is the limit as x approaches -2? And be very careful, that one little sign there completely changes your answer sometimes, just from the left. What do you think the answer to that is? Very good. Here's -2. It approaches 1. Okay, somebody else, what about from the right? Good, -2. So just pick a number slightly bigger than -2, so that you're to the right of it, and then move closer. So if the limit from the left is 1 and the limit from the right is -2, that means that the limit where it doesn't say just left or just right, it's got to be the same. So if they're not the same, just say does not exist. If these are both 1, your answer would be 1. If they were both -2, your answer would be -2. But if they're different, you have to say does not exist. Okay, what about the limit as x approaches 1? I agree. It approaches 1 from the left and 1 from the right. What about this point, though? Shouldn't we have said -2? Very good, because limits do not care what's happening at that time. If that is a struggle for you, make yourself covered up so that you can't even see it. Approaches 1 from the left, approaches 1 from the right. Don't care what's happening at that time, at least not for limits. Okay, as x approaches 0, it looks like it approaches -2 from the left and -2 from the right. 3 from the left. Sounds good. -1. That sounds good. Approaches -3 from the left and the right. 0. 0 from the left and 0 from the right. Now this isn't a limit question anymore. Notice they're trying to keep you on your toes, make sure that you're paying attention to this. This has nothing to do with calculus. This is just a point. When x is -2, y is 1. Just a point. They're trying to force you to consciously think about the difference between a point and a limit so that you don't overlap them. Two different things. And then finally, f of 1 is what? -2. Thank you. Okay, any of those you'd like me to go over again or go over in more detail? Because I'm going to have you practice a handful of those in a minute. Yeah. Yeah. So my bathroom pass is up over here this year. I ask that you not use it the first or last 10 minutes. Put your name on the board to take the pass, and then when you bring the pass back, to take your name off the board. That way I know who has it if you don't return it. Okay, so we need to go over just this part here as a group, and then I can let you practice some of this, and I can come around and try to help fill in the gaps with what's not intuitive. So we already know one way when a limit does not exist. What is that? Good. When the left and the right are not the same. Now, on a free response, obviously we have to try to be more mathematical than that. So what we would say is the limit as x approaches a from the left, a is just some generic number, is not the same as what it approaches on the right. It's what we've done a handful of times already today. It's just a mathematical way to say it. You see what it's approaching on the left, you see what it's approaching on the right. If they're the same, it's your limit. If it's not the same, it does not exist. I think you actually know that already, but you need to be familiar with that type of justification. If you were asked to prove that a limit doesn't exist at 3, your justification would be this, but instead of saying a, you would say 3. So, okay, the two other ways a limit cannot exist is if you had a limit of something generic. Again, I'm just using generic number a so that you don't think it's something special about the number 2 or whatever I pick. Since a limit is about what it approaches, it can actually, the graph can be going straight up, and it can approach infinity. Now, this is actually pretty significant, by the way. I'm not going to bore you to death on this, but this is the first time in your mathematical career, unless you did this in pre-cal last year, that you can ever have an equation equal to infinity. You could say things headed to infinity, but you can never say something equals infinity. You can't do that without limits, and that's a big part of why those are so important. Now, the reason that this is the same thing as does not exist is because infinity is not a number. Infinity is an idea. You can't reach it. You need to be familiar with this because on your AP exam, sometimes it might ask you a question where the limit is infinity, and sometimes they put this down as the answer and you would pick it, and sometimes they put this down as the answer and you'd pick it. They'd never put both of these because they would both be correct. Infinity is the same thing as does not exist. Likewise, if your graph was going down forever, negative infinity is also just an idea, not a number. So sometimes on multiple choice the answer would be negative infinity. Sometimes the answer would be does not exist. They switch those interchangeably. So just pick the one that makes the most sense. When we do free responses, you can pick whichever one you want. I would suggest you just say does not exist. That way if you accidentally said infinity and it was negative infinity, you don't lose any points. So if the limit goes up, if it approaches infinity or negative infinity, we can say does not exist. And if the limit from the left doesn't equal the limit from the right, we say it does not exist. It's the only ways limits would not work. Okay, the other question type I'm going to ask you to practice on this specific handout is sketching some graphs. And again, this is mostly trying to get you used to the notation. The difference between what kind of information does a point give you on the graph versus what type of information do limits give you about the graph versus what does it mean for your graph to be increasing, etc. And there's not just one correct answer for these. There's multiple correct answers, but we just need to make sure that all of these are true. So, first clue, when x is 3, y is supposed to be negative 1. So our finished graph has to have that point there to be correct. Okay, B and C are about limits. So as x approaches 3, it's supposed to be approaching a y value of 4. So as x gets closer to 3, I'm just guessing, I don't know. I know that it needs to approach a y value of 4 on the left and the right. Now this is very subtle, but I already have one thing that can't be correct. What's wrong with what I have?
There's a point and then the line is also continuous.
Okay, so there's a point here and you're referring to this point too?
Yeah.
Why is that a problem?
You can have two points on the graph, like with the same x-axis.
That's true. Well, you can, but not if it's a function. You remember how to be a function, we have that quick little vertical line test thing, the test? You need to make sure this is an open circle. It can't hit both. Okay, the third clue, we want to approach -2 from the right. It's supposed to get close to 1. So -2 from the right needs to be getting close to a y value of 1. And I'm just going to connect those pieces. I don't really know if they're supposed to be connected, but we can fix it. Okay, the fourth clue, g is increasing from -2 to 3. Well, what does increasing mean? One more time. That's a great way to say it. As x is increasing, y is increasing. So moving left to right, just like you read a book, the graph is going up. So is my graph doing that, or do I need to change anything? Mine's fine, right? I wasn't reading ahead on there. It just accidentally was okay. It's increasing during that time. Okay, and then the last one, they want the limit as x approaches -2 from the left to be greater than the limit as x approaches -2 from the right. So right now, I was already told this. It approaches -2 from the right, it's supposed to approach 1. So I just need this to be something bigger. You could pick 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know, just whatever you feel like. And again, it can hit here or here, but not both. So you need to pick. It could be neither, actually. Now, make sure your graph goes forever in both directions. It doesn't magically stop, but the arrow's on the end. And then my advice, since there's multiple correct answers here, I would double check your clues before you moved on, because sometimes doing the fourth and fifth clue might mess up the first or second clue. So I still have this point here. This limit's still correct. That limit's still correct. This is still increasing at the right times. And this limit is bigger than this limit. If all of that's true, then even if your graph is different than mine and different than your neighbor's, it's still perfectly fine. But we're trying to get you to think about what a limit looks like on a graph versus the notation for points. So, okay. Any quick questions about that number 4? Okay, then let's go ahead and dive into it. And you guys start with question 5. So these are just true, false. So T or F is fine. Go ahead and give those a shot. And then after that, the next little group of questions is like the ones we practice on the top of the last page. And there's like 4 or 5 sets of those. And then there's a couple sets of the graphs like we just did. So go ahead and start moving on at your own pace. I do, right there. There's also one in the back if that's more convenient for you in the future. Now, I have to insist that you guys stop at some point, especially with the class recording, so I can move us along and give you a little more instructions. But for this part, you are welcomed and encouraged. You will need to work with others in this class. If you're always only asking me, you're not going to get all the help that you need, because there's a lot more of y'all than there is for me. So you're welcome to compare answers with your neighbors. You're welcome to help each other out. I would suggest maybe not right this second, but maybe sometime in the next 30 minutes or so, you might go to our class website, go to the solutions, and pull up the solutions on your Chromebook so that you can check and make sure your work is correct and that you don't need to get clarification. This is not a topic that we just do day after day after day, so you really want to get it cleared up today if at all possible. And again, I am going to ask us to move on to number 4 at some point. So I will ask you to stop your conversations then, but in the meantime, you are welcome to work together, help each other, check answers with each other, and you can also ask me for help. So I'll be coming around. If you want me to double check something for you real fast, I've got my hard copy of my answers I can look at. If you need something explained, anything I can help with, let me know.
I was wondering on this question, how'd you know that the one was right there? Right there.
I didn't.
Oh, you
It
didn't.
didn't matter. As long as those things are true, then it's fine. So yeah, you could have put the point up there and all those are still true.
Okay.
Do those. If you already do those. What if it's right there?
You already did the true false?
I got a bunch of truths.
I created all the
Truth, that was true.
Try it. Look at see again. I mean, obviously you know what the answer is. It's one or the other. Think about why that's the case.
Wait. I was looking at the right line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If there was, like there was an asymptote at x equals 3. Since if it was from the right, since it just shoots up, we could either say infinity or does not exist. And then on this side, you could say negative infinity or does not exist. Anything I can help with? Yeah. Okay. You might need the first few minutes. On our class website, I have it recorded, so if you're not on the missed.
He had a full practice yesterday. Like he looked for 2 stories, but he's out of it now.
You have done with the true false? Have you checked your answers to it yet? Okay. Did we get the same answer?
You just checked it.
True false? Yeah. Can I check your true falses real fast? Perfect. Yeah. This one. You need to change that answer, but also look at it and make sure you know why. And you might want to jot down like what was the major.
It's up there. It's just
True false? I agree with all those. Here's the last one. And I will admit, I messed it up the other day too. Because as x approaches 2, what is that one that goes up?
Oh, yeah.
It does exist, yeah. The word is kind of backwards. Does that finish with true false? Yep, that's perfect. Okay, I know real quick. Again, all of this is on my website, so you're welcome to pull it up on your Chromebook.
Yeah.
You need to check your, I insist you would check your answers.
Yeah.
A lot of times I suggest you don't have to redo it word for word.
Yeah.
But if you want to check maybe the first couple of blocks here real quick for that. And I really don't want you like burning it in your brain. Okay, keep going.
Yeah.
I was just assuming that this keeps going.
Okay, I think everybody's made it through the true false, and obviously I didn't check everybody. So again, you're welcome to pull up the answers from the class website on your Chromebook. I insist that you do that at some point. It's probably a good idea as you go through it as well, so you don't have to redo a lot. But just real quickly, number 5, example 5, true false. Well, every question was true except for the last one. G was false. So if you did not get true on all except for G, you need to retry those questions. You probably need to circle those questions, and you might need to call me over so I can help you figure out what you didn't do before you keep going.
A graph in the line segment, and on the far left side is approaching. Would there be a professional question if you're approaching like the farthest level point from the left? Like, just a point, like a graph, but is this graph? Like, and you're approaching this point. From the left? From the left. Okay, that's what I mean.
So from the left, you would say does not exist. And if it needed both, it does not exist is not the same thing as -3. So it would be both.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then just a heads up, I'm going to give you guys a little bit more time here, probably about 10 or 15 minutes to keep chipping away at this assignment. Then I will ask you to put it aside for a few minutes so that we can look at the next topic. We're going to just talk about the next thing so that your brain starts processing that information. But if you look down here for homework, this will be the only one that I expect you to finish and be ready to turn in on Friday, this number 3, okay? So, again, I do want to show you a little bit other stuff. But this is what I'd like you to try. Also on the back page, there's 4 past AP questions from this topic. One of those I don't expect you to know how to do, but just save those for the end, please. Do those after you do the other pages. So, do about 10 or 15 minutes. I'll spill your attention for a little bit, and then I'll give you the rest of the class to work on this, and then if you don't have it done, it'll be homework. Yep. That is decreasing. Reading left to right, your graph's going down.
I was thinking.
So you need to scale up.
Oh, that's what I had, but when I checked it, that's why I forgot. So this one is.
No, that's my mistake. You're right, thank you.
It's the other way around. It's like both.
Now remember, if you're checking your graphs to mine, your graphs can look different and still be correct. It just needs to match all of the clues given to you.
That's not open. I was looking at this one, yeah, it's original. Airport, that's right. One is one. That's it.
It's from the left. Here's the
I've never had. Is it, you've
So
had it?
ignore that dot.
That's a bad one. Dude, imagine that's so random. You go, guess what we're having? I bet. I bet. I bet. I bet. You can trust them.
I'll be giving you just a minute to kind of finish up your thought, and then I'll ask you to put this aside for a moment. Again, I'll give you more class time today to work on it. Okay, so the second time I'm saying this, but just to be 100% clear here, we're going to look at number 4, and we're going to talk about what it is and how we're going to work those question types, and I want you to follow along with me. But for homework, you don't have to finish number 4. You do have to finish number 3. So if you're still not done after I give you a little bit more time after going over this, then you need to add that to your homework list, please. Also, I did have one mistake on the key, the answer key. So I already fixed that. I re-uploaded it. So if you have already downloaded the solutions, if you re-download them, it'll have the correction on there. One of the graphs, I just had a piece wrong. So if you get confused about that, and if you haven't downloaded the solutions yet on your Chromebook, you don't need to do anything. When you go get it, it'll be the new copy. So same link and everything. Okay, so on this one, I think I don't have this one numbered. This should be number 4, I think. Is that correct? Okay, so put a number 4 in the top right, and then when you have a binder, put it behind number 3, and you're done with the binder part. What we're going to do in this handout, and we're going to work more on this on Friday, other than the little bit I'm about to go over with you, is we're doing the exact same thing we just did on handout 3, but this time, instead of having the graph, we have the function. We have the function, and we are going to approach this algebraically, or sometimes called analytically. So, I don't know what this graph looks like. I'm probably not allowed to graph it on my calculator to see what it looks like. If I could, or if I knew what this graph looks like, I could do the exact same thing we just were doing on the other handout. But since I don't know what this looks like, and I don't care what this looks like, that would be a lot of time and effort put towards something that's not going to help. So, when we have the function like this, you should always do direct substitution first. And by direct substitution, I just mean we're going to plug it in and see what we get for an answer. So if we're trying to figure out the limit as x approaches -1, we're going to plug in a -1 everywhere there's an x. We will evaluate this, and if you were left with a real number like -5, that is your answer. You can assume that's your answer. There are a few cases in mathematics where that's not the answer, but for our course, that's fine. If you get a real number, you can assume that's your answer. So, notice what I just did is, I still don't know what this graph looks like, but with about 5 seconds of work, I know that if I had this graph, it approaches a y value of -5 the closer you get to -1. So, with just a little bit of work, I know something about this function, I know something about its graph. So, number 2, if I do direct substitution, I try to plug 2 in everywhere there's an x, but there's no x's. So, what do you think the answer is going to be? 6. Good guess. I plugged 2 in everywhere it would go, and then it simplified to be 6. Now, this one's pretty, I kind of understand why that one's not intuitive to some people, but let me point this out to you, because this is a very easy graph to make. What does y equals 6 look like? All lines are straight. Okay, horizontal line, 6. So no matter what x value I pick, whether it's x approaches 2, x approaches 4, x approaches -4, who cares? Do you see that no matter what x value you approach, you're always approaching a y value of 6? That's consistent with this. No matter what you're approaching, there's no x's to plug in, so your answer is always 6. Okay, and then this leads us towards the first major problem that calculus solves. Something that calculus can handle, that no matter how much time or effort you put into trying to do these from other math courses, it's not going to work. So we're still going to start off with direct substitution. We're going to plug in 0 into this. But the numerator goes to 0 and the denominator goes to 0. I'm going to do both these at the same time. This one's a little harder to compute, but just trust me that numerator goes to 0 and denominator goes to 0 also when you plug in -7. This is a problem for us. It is not consistent with what you've learned in past math classes. What you've learned in past math classes is 0 divided by a number is what? 0. And a number divided by 0 is, there you go. Sometimes, I don't know if this helps for those of you that got this mixed up, but some people do like this. This is okay to do. This is not okay to do. You ever seen that before? Okay, maybe that'll help you remember which one's 0 and which one's undefined. So, you've had multiple math classes where your teacher said 0 divided by anything is 0. And you've had multiple math classes where they say if you try to divide by 0, it's undefined. In calculus, we say, well, what happens if the numerator and denominator goes to 0? And the answer is, it depends. It depends on how quickly the numerators go into something and how quickly the denominators go into something. 0 over 0 is called indeterminate form. And it could be anything. The answer might be 0, it might be undefined, it might be 2.5. So what we have to do is use some algebra, and we're going to look at other techniques in the next few classes, but today I'm only wanting you to think about factoring. This is the most common question type. So we will rewrite the question. We'll factor the top with a GCF. Again, I'm just going to do both these at the same time. Denominators did not factor. This guy factors. It's okay if you can't factor as quickly as me, but you do have to be able to factor correctly. And so all I did was make it look different. I'm making it look like a different form. Every time we're dealing with this 0 over 0, you can try direct substitution again, but you're still going to get 0 over 0. You need something to cancel. So notice x divided by x cancels, x plus 7 divided by x plus 7 cancels. As soon as you get something to cancel, you can go back to direct substitution and then it should work. So plug 0 into what's left over. If you get a real number, you're done. Plug -7 into what's left over. If you get a real number, you can assume that that's your answer. So honestly, if you can factor, you can do this question type. So one thing is, I can promise you our first major quiz, that's in a couple weeks, will have at least one of these on there. I can also promise you this question type will be on the AP exam. So as long as you know to start with direct substitution and deal with factoring, you will be able to do that very efficiently. Now, we do more than just factoring. Today I'm just asking you to think about factoring. There's lots of other algebra tricks that we can do, but factoring is the most common one. Okay, so now let's look at this one. This is the last one I want you to look at with me today, and that'll give you a little more information about the bottom of the page, and then I will shut up and let you work on assignment number 3 again. Okay, so here's what I would assume you would do if I gave you a few minutes to try it. You're going to say, all right, he told me to factor. That's how the numerator factors. That's how the denominator factors. Then he said cancel and then do direct substitution. But nothing cancels. So what did I not do? Right. You always try direct substitution first. You only need to get into this mess of factoring and other algebra tricks in another class if it's 0 over 0. This question's not 0 over 0. You plug in -6 into all of this, you get 15 over 0, and 15 over 0, undefined. So for the limit, we would say does not exist. If you just assume you have to factor every time, you're going to be doing extra work and sometimes lead you to the wrong answer. Always do direct substitution first. If you get 0 over 0, try to factor. Okay, the last thing I need to tell you about this page is you are not responsible for these special trig limits. You can cross those out, and you can cross off these couple of example questions, 6, 7, and 8. So until a couple years ago, we did used to make students memorize these at the beginning of the year. The problem is you're just memorizing them, and it helps you get by for a couple weeks. But about a month from now, once I teach you how to do derivatives, there's a rule called L'Hopital's rule that you can use, and you can actually figure out what these limits are with L'Hopital's rule in about 30 seconds. So there's no point in you memorizing them now, and just to learn a way to find them as you need them in a month. So that's why I think that's not a good priority of your time. So you can X those out. We're not going to worry about those at all. You'll be able to do those later on in the year. So one of the things we'll do on Thursday is we will practice some of these questions. Direct substitution, get your answer sometimes. Direct substitution, 0 over 0. Factor, cancel out direct substitution the other times. But you don't have to do any of that today. I don't expect you to work on number 4 unless you're just ahead of the game and you want to. I want you to go back to number 3 now and spend the rest of class on that. And we've got just about 20 minutes, so that's going to put a big chip.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
I need to speak to Mr. White about something that
Check.
thanks.
Okay, sorry, there's a lot of hands went up at once. For the left, it's about 6. For the right, it's about 5. 6 figures, 5. That's fine.
Sorry.
No. Okay. No, it's fine. My problem is I was working these in meetings last week. I get distracted, so. Okay. So you have one of the handouts already. I don't have the other. So since it'll be Friday and then again on Monday, I'd really recommend that you try to get caught up so that you don't feel like you're falling behind. So what you'll want to do after class on Friday is okay, if there's any other handouts, do you have a printer at home? Okay, if you scan down here, if there's any more handouts we do, you just click download a new copy, print it off, and if you go up to the top, this will be the other agenda that gives you a 30-second snapshot of what you missed. And then on Friday, if you click August 23rd, 3rd period, and when that becomes a link, then you're going to hear everything. So. Is Friday, it's not TLX, is it? Okay. Do you do that too? That's the one that drives me crazy because you'll miss so much.
Yes, I'm on Mentos too. So
Oh, okay.
first 2 months is like crazy.
Yeah. Do you know Thompson? He's a good one to get help from. If you ever feel like you need extra help while you're doing tennis.
And also
Oh, Lana, yeah, sorry. I thought you said Lana. Oh, she does tennis too? Is she any good? No, okay.
Oh. Does it say this limit and this point are the same? Like, okay. Yeah, so it's really giving you two telling you your point and the limit. Okay. It just leaves them in one second.
Okay, again, please call me over and let me help you if I can.
Oh, wait. I gotta edit it.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Is this everywhere else increases? I don't know.
Yeah, I fixed it on my page and it didn't finish there. I know I didn't. Okay. So -2. 3 is constant and then decreasing everywhere else. So yours is increasing.
Okay.
Remember, you have to go left to right. Your graph's going up. Because if you're looking at it this way, it looks like it's going down. But always left to right, like you read it. You know what the greatest integer function looks like? Okay, that's the one I don't expect y'all to know. But it's also called the step function. It's a weird way where you always round down. So like anything between 0 and 1 becomes 0. Anything becomes 1 and 2 becomes 1. Anything between -1 and 0 becomes -1. So here's the graph of the greatest integer thing that you got.
Oh, okay, so it's not talking about this graph right
No.
here. Okay.
Two separate questions. I'm not worried about y'all knowing that one. AP exam does not expect you to know that function, so we'll talk about it with respect on Thursday. Are you down with this one? Which other one did you say was messed up?
This one is first, the one at
We did the exact same thing.
Oh, +2.
It also really doesn't matter.
It's so decreasing that it's always increasing.
I'm sorry that I couldn't edit it because I didn't. Yeah, you're right. That's why
Are you gonna tell me you're not gonna be here on Friday?
I do actually.
Yes, I'm not gonna be around.
I'm confused. What? That's right.
I don't have anything else printed out.
Yeah, that's an open point. That's the point right
Did
there.
you do tennis last year?
Also had to do.
Technically what I made was correct. It's just very messy.
I just don't remember you missing class very much last year for tennis. Did you miss class?
No, probably not, because Larson doesn't really play that much on Fridays. He has constant exams. Friday at like 7.
Also, I do have some classroom calculators over here. Anytime you need to borrow mine while you're in class, just help yourself at the start of class and put it back at the end of class. You don't have to ask. Do y'all have anything I can help you with? I think Texas might have a space right there. See those two front slashes? This is right there.
And I was wondering, like, pillows just on.
Here, try to, can you copy all of that?
Like a dog.
Copy that and then put it up here. Then do a Google search for it. Let's do it. But you only have to do this one, so I'm asking. Yeah, they're already slow, I know. Where'd you come from? I thought you took,
Oh yeah, I came from Harvard.
Okay.
Yeah.
We didn't offer anything to retail last year, we offered nutrition.
Yeah,
That's how I knew you didn't go to there.
Yeah.
So the bad news is, I'm afraid the AP calculus will offer, it's gonna be 3. So,
It wasn't bad. Like AP pre-cal wasn't too difficult.
yeah. Yeah, I was kind of worried about it, because it looked like it was gonna be really hard, but the pass rate was like 75.
I didn't realize it. I didn't expect to.
Yeah. That one's true. So we only had the 1 year of AP pre-cal, and 75% of that. No. Okay, has anybody got some math I can help with?
Like whenever it says like F is in icing,
Yeah, I'm just keeping you on your toes. It has nothing to do with me. Okay, you guys still have over 10 minutes, so unless you are done with all of your homework, please keep at it.
Mr. Donovan,
Yes.
you'll be able to help me with sketching the graph.
Can I help you sketch a graph?
Yes. So with, when it's, just approaching it from both sides, is it how do you know which?
Okay, so you got this down, you're at the point there. You know it has to approach 1 from the left and right of 2. So I would just make a little line, just like you did.
Like
Just
so,
make,
like
I don't know, it depends on the rest of the clues.
Okay.
I would just draw it some way and then fix it later. Okay, so now you got a limit that, so that's fine. Okay, 4 from the right should be 3, so what is that? Yeah, just guess whether it goes up or down. You don't know until you keep going. Okay, you need to make sure it's increasing when x is less than -2. So right now, it looks like it's decreasing. So instead of going this way, let's make it go that way. And 4 from the left needs to be bigger than 4 from the right. So right now, 4 from the right, you were already told that this is 3. So you need 4 from the left to be 2. So just make it go anywhere higher than that is fine. They don't give you enough specifics to.
Be closed.
Go ahead and just sketch it first, and then we'll put it. It's giving you 2. Saying the limit there is 1 and the point. It's just combining 2 clues into 1. Okay, that's fine. That meets the condition. Now, if you wanted to put the dot here, you could. If you'd rather put the dot here, you can. As long as you don't do both. If you do both, it doesn't have vertical line cuts. Or you can leave them both open. So that's,
But one of them?
or you can do one.
Okay.
There's lots of correct answers. You just need your graph to match all of that at the end. So, go ahead and connect. Put arrows on the end, and then we'll recheck your clues. Okay, well, see now, when you say this, yeah, make these connect here. Or actually, the point's up here, so. Oh, no, you need to connect these. Okay, so erase this arrow, because that makes it look like it's randomly going in that direction.
Oh, is it not the left? Oh, I see.
When I see arrows, I'm talking about like the far left and far right. It keeps going on the end.
Oh, because it comes from.
Okay, so now we got something. So now let's just double check. -2, 5 is still there, that's good. Okay. As x approaches -2, approach y value of 1 from left and right, that's still fine. 4 from the right is still 3.
So the left.
Increasing, x is less than -2, and the limit from the left to 4 is bigger than the left, the limit from the right to 4. So the rest doesn't matter.
Thank you. That is 0, it's -1, and then two divided by
Okay. Yeah.
Do you have to graph on the AP exam? You get to do fun graphs like. Let's see if I can find some.
I didn't write it here. From what I think, it can't be 0, it's approaching 0, and the closest.
We do graphs like this.
So when you plug it in.
Honestly, this is probably the easiest thing we do all year. But so, it just doesn't mean anything to you right now. But the other thing we do is a lot of times in calculus you'll be given a graph of a derivative and then asked a bunch of questions about its function. Again, that doesn't make any sense to you until you know what a derivative is.
I think it's good so that you can work on it. So. Yeah, I have a typo right there. I got yeah, that's what you do. You don't have to. Yeah. Tried me last year.
Well, I didn't mean to. I just whole thing got switched up.
You were only like what, 1 class or 2?
I was in one, I switched my schedule second day and switched my whole class.
Oh, shoot, I didn't know.
You did this.
Yeah, I mean, I got 3 jobs.
I knew that.
Yeah. You okay? Sorry, I have to bug y'all to make sure that you're doing okay until I can trust you that you'll ask me for help when you actually need it. So. Okay. Remember this from last year?
This one.
Well, these two are actually like these that I'm not going to hold you responsible for. That's so it's good that you didn't think you knew how to do those. Find any more mistakes?
Oh, because 0 is under 1. Right?
You already figured out you didn't have to do
So
those?
it has to be, so it has to be negative.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Equal.
You're okay with assignment 3 though?
Are you saying that 5 and 6 are the ones that we aren't expected to know?
Yeah, those are actually variations of these that you're not.
It's 0 over 0.
I can show you how to do them, but it's just like a trick how to get the answers, and you have.
Better just learn the whole thing.
You'll learn how to do it in a better way where you don't memorize anything later.
No, you missed the big.
I try to limit how much
No, leave that,
information.
I'm sorry, that was clear revision.
I did the school, I also got
That's
When did I do that?
yeah, and then I was Actually, we'll find everything. That's great. So my first period, that happened late. I was like, all right, what folder, what should I make No, like, show me the world's supposed to pick purple. Because it like happened. You should like calculate.
Thank you. You're not in trouble already, are you?
No, I just had an issue with my schedule.
He used to be our main discipline guy.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, he's good at it. 'Cause,
Yeah.
you know, he played
Kinda
football for Florida.
Oh, really? For Florida?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, he was pretty good.
Wow.
I don't think he played pro, but
Wow, I didn't know that.
yep. Last year, you know, Razorbacks, one of the few games we won was against Florida. So
Yeah.
I went in there and gave him a hard time,
Yeah.
and he did not appreciate it.
Yeah.
He used to be one of my bosses, so I have to tread lightly with him. But you mowed lawns all summer, I'm guessing.
I did some, but I was focusing on football. So, but I still manage about 12 properties.
Okay.
But I want to cut back a little bit, just to focus on football, get a scholarship for that. How long? Probably just lifting films, probably about an hour and a half.
Okay, I'm gonna say it one more time. We got about 2 minutes till you're dismissed. Obviously, we have third lunch. I guess I probably should have said that at the start of class, but you guys have figured that out. Once again, this third time I'm saying this. Assignment number 4, you don't have to do any of that for homework at all. I guess if you're worried about starting off the year right, you're welcome to. But number 3, I will ask you to turn in on Friday. You should expect that. So if there's any of that you don't have finished, then please add it to your homework list.